Alright, what's up, guys? It's Analyst, and I'm back for week 5 now. We went through the first 4 weeks. This is week 5, as I just said, off to a great start. So we're noticing some trends broke. I talked to you guys a couple weeks ago about noticing trends and seeing what continued. Keelan Cole in the first 2 weeks was looking like a wide receiver 1, but he's fallen off a little bit, and I'll talk about some of the other trends over here too. Oh, you're not going to load. Okay, there we go. So, let's just jump into these games. I don't really have too much of a quote for week 5. I feel like weeks 1 through 4 were a lot easier to set a guideline for. But I will say this something about this season is something I've been noticing is depth might be the winner this year. It may not necessarily be trading up for those starters. It may more so be just holding on to your depth. So last week, the Titans and Steelers game was postponed because of COVID, so they both took their bye. This week, it's looking like the Patriots game might be at risk. Stephon Gilmore this morning tested positive for COVID. Some other issues that have been rising is that the Titans, where's the Titans? Yeah, the good old Titans, they had 2 more players test positive today. So we'll see if it's a continuation of the spread. There's a chance these 2 games may not be played. Someone brought up maybe the Bills could play against the Broncos, and then the Patriots could take their bye. I don't know. It's going to start getting messy, but point being, like, you might have to just keep your depth, because if you trade up for a guy like Derrick Henry, then you're screwed. Or if you have a whole bunch of Titans and Patriots or Broncos players, and it's just not a good situation to be in. So this is the season where I'm really looking at holding on to depth. But let's just jump into let's jump into week 1. As you guys can tell, I'm clearly awake right now. We got the Chicago Bears 3-1 hosting the 3-1 Buccaneers. This is gonna be the Thursday night game. So this game's actually quite interesting, and the reason I say that is because Nick Foles has been hot and cold. The Indianapolis Colts are one of the best team against the pass in the NFL. So the fact that Foles didn't do too much in that game doesn't really mean a lot. Justin Herbert had a big game against the Buccaneers this last week. He had, I think, 3 touchdowns, almost 300 yards as a rookie. So I'd say this could be a decent game if you're considering streaming Nick Foles. David Montgomery, I actually really like in this game. Last week, I think he saw 6 targets, which is a high for him. Obviously, with Cohen out, he's becoming more and more of a factor in that passing game. And he also played 85% of the snaps. So I think David Montgomery, from this point forward, seems to be a high wide receiver 2, based on the volume and time he's getting on the field. So I'll be starting David Montgomery. Nick Foles may not be bad. Allen Robinson, who's one of my favorite guys. I actually have a stat here. If you guys are curious, I just did my 32 stats, 32 fantasy facts on my website, theffanalyst.com. I'll put that link down below. But which is where I do a fact for every team, a fact or 2. Sometimes I throw a couple extra in there. But this is the one I found on Allen Robinson. My point I'm trying to make. Allen Robinson, in the 4th quarter over the last 2 games, has a total of 9 catches on 11 targets for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's 2 quarters, right? That's the 4th quarter of last game, 4th quarter of the game before. That's 9 catches, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, in the other 6 quarters, so the first 3 quarters of the first game, first 3 quarters of the last game, he has a total of 8 catches on 12 targets for 86 yards and 0 touchdowns. Allen Robinson in the 4th quarter has done miles better than he has done in the first 3 quarters of the last 2 games. So Allen Robinson is a 4th quarter stud. And in a game like this, he could probably even pick it up earlier, because Nick Foles He came in. He came in on the fourth quarter. I think it was like a third, fourth quarter 2 weeks ago. And then last week, he just couldn't get anything done until that last drive. So that's really when Allen Robinson started to show up. So in this game, I'm expecting Allen Robinson to do big. And he's been scoring 20 plus the last 2 weeks. So I'm expecting nothing less this week. Darnell Mooney has been, I think he's their 5th-round rookie wide receiver. He's been getting more involved than a lot of people have expected. I was expecting maybe Riley Ridley to take another step forward, Calvin Ridley's brother, or even Anthony Miller, who a lot of people were high on, but it's been Darnell Mooney. Obviously I don't want to start a guy like that because you just don't trust him, and he hasn't really done enough to merit an every week start. But it makes me weary about Anthony Miller, is my point. Jimmy Graham, surprisingly, has kind of been a thing this year. He had that big game against the Falcons, just like every other tight end in the NFL, including Robert Tonyan, if you watch that game on Monday night. So I'm not excited for Jimmy Graham in this matchup. On the flip side, Tom Brady threw 5 touchdowns last week. He's starting to pick it up a little bit. Short week. He doesn't really have too many weapons. I'd classify him as like a border top 10 quarterback, but I'm not going crazy for him. Leonard Fournette, I'm curious about this. If Fournette is active, then what I would say to that is I probably won't be starting Ronald Jones. But I'm just curious because I looked before. I didn't see anything. So as of right now, he's questionable and he's projected. He's likely going to be a game time decision. So if Fournette is out, then Ronald Jones is definitely startable. Looks like LeSean McCoy is going to miss some time as well. Keyshawn Vaughn came out of nowhere last week and had a role. So he might be a sneaky play if both Fournette and McCoy are out. But otherwise, I mean, it would take that for me to start Ronald Jones. It would take both those guys being out for me to consider Ronald Jones. As far as these wide receivers, I'm pretty sure Mike Evans is on track to play. Chris Godwin's going to be out this week. It's on a short week. He doesn't have the time to get better. Scotty Miller is also questionable. I believe it was like all their wide receivers were questionable. But the only wide receiver I want is Mike Evans. Tight end wise, we know O.J. Howard's now out for the year with an Achilles injury. Does that make me like Gronk more? No, not really. It doesn't. I mean, primetime Brady and Gronk would be absolutely fantastic. As a Patriots fan, that's something I'd love to see. So that, I mean, I'll look out for that, but I'm not expecting anything here. Especially Cameron Brate, who's the one who caught the touchdown pass last week. So, yeah, I'm not huge on any of these tight ends here. Gronk hasn't really done much at all. Next game here, we got the Washington football team. Always fun to say, hosting the Los Angeles Rams. So the football team actually just made a quarterback change. Dwayne Haskins is not only getting the bench, he's going to be riding third string. He's going to be inactive. Alex Smith is going to be the backup. So if Kyle Allen, who is now the starter, gets hurt, we'll get to see Alex Smith in action. So that'll be very, very interesting against Ndamukong Suh, against Aaron Donald. So that'll be fun. Great first game back if he does end up playing at some point. But yeah, Kyle Allen, I'm obviously not I'm not excited about starting him. I'm not interested in starting him. I want to see who he is on this team. He was a game manager last year. He actually did okay enough. But most importantly, he did target the running backs a lot, as we saw with Christian McCaffrey. And he did keep DJ Moore alive as well. So he did enough on the offense to support all of the fantasy assets, which is more than we can say for Dwayne Haskins. So Antonio Gibson, after putting up 20 on the Ravens last week, he's an every week start. I'll fire him up at home against the Rams. Who else? Terry McLaurin. It's against Jalen Ramsey with a new quarterback, but you just can't sit him. I mean, Terry's just been way too good and way too consistent to consider sitting him. So I'm starting Terry no matter what. Logan Thomas, one of the facts in my 32 facts was that He actually is top 5 in tight end targets, and I believe he's like the tight end 23. So he hasn't been able to bring a lot of those targets down, partially due to Dwayne Haskins. So we'll see if that situation improves with Kyle Allen, and if it does, then he'll definitely be worth an add in the future. But as of right now, I'm staying away from him in this matchup. As far as the Rams, they're third, I believe, in the league for rushing attempts per game. So trying to predict whether it's Darrell Henderson or Malcolm Brown in this game is just not something I want to do. I believe there's also a chance Cam Akers comes back. Yeah, so Cam Akers is probably going to come back in this game, which just makes this backfield all that much more complicated. So I'm not looking to start Malcolm Brown. I'm not looking to start Cam Akers. I'm not looking to start Darrell Henderson. I'm trying to figure out which one of these guys is going to be the guy. It's just a headache. Last week, it seemed like it was going to be Darrell Henderson, but McVay pulled a fast one on us and gave most of the work to Brown, who still didn't even do all that good. So, surprise there. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Kupp starting to pick up some steam. He's been consistent over the last couple weeks, so Kupp's an every week star. It's a lot better of a matchup for Robert Woods this week as well. He had a pretty tough matchup last week against James Bradbury. So I think Robert Woods is startable. Cooper Kupp is a start. Tyler Higbee just hasn't done enough. He's been much more missed than hit. I think Gerald Everett had a rushing touchdown last week. So, yeah, it's a mess with Higbee. I just don't want to put him in my lineup. And Jared Goff could be okay. I just think this is a game where it could easily turn into the Rams running backs just taking over. So my expectations for Goff aren't really that high. I didn't mention the defenses. I don't really like any of these defenses. Maybe the Rams defense I think would be a good start. But okay, and we're going to do what we did last week. Last week I skimmed over some of the possible cancellation games. So I'm going to skip over this Titans-Bills, and I'll do that at the end, as well as the Patriots-Broncos, and I'll do that at the end as well. I believe there was another person who tested positive on a team. I just can't, for the life of me, remember what team. I think it was the Raiders. I think the Raiders had someone test positive as well. But I haven't seen anything too serious about that. So we'll go over all these games here. Steelers coming off a bye, an unexpected bye, hosting the Eagles. They've had a lot of time to prepare. They know what makes Carson Wentz tick, and I think the Eagles defense is just going to the Steelers defense is just going to eat them up in this battle for Pennsylvania. So, Big Ben, fine starting him. James Conner, fine starting him. Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, starting both those guys. Deontay coming off concussion. He's been cleared. Deontay actually, I think, would have played last week as well. So, playing both those guys, not interested in Eric Ebron, and I'm definitely starting the Steelers defense this week. As far as the Eagles, Carson Wentz, I don't want to start him. Not with TJ Watt in his face and all these playmakers in the Steelers defense. I'm not starting Carson Wentz at all. Miles Sanders, I feel like, is a guy you have to start based on the volume and the touches that he's been getting and the snaps and how long he's been in the field. I mean, he's a clear workhorse on this team. Hopefully he can get some more targets this week, but and I think he will with the Eagles playing from behind. So starting Miles Sanders no matter what. As far as these wide receivers, can't trust them. Deshaun Jackson, Greg Ward maybe, but Alshon Jeffrey might be coming back this week as well. So it's just a mess. I'm not looking to start any of these Eagles wide receivers. As far as tight ends, Zach Ertz with Dallas Goedert out. I mean, he's going to be a weekly plug-in. It's just about if he can get enough targets to produce. So we'll see. Not excited about Zach Ertz, as you guys can tell. But let's go into this next game here. We got the New York Jets. The 0-4 Jets on the MetLife turf hosting the Arizona Cardinals. So it looks like Joe Flacco is going to be starting this game. I'm not considering starting Joe Flacco. Le'Veon Bell is also going to probably be back this game. I think he'll end up being a flex play for me in PPR. I want to see how that pans out. They did release Kalen Balaj, so that's something that was worrying me because Kalen Balaj was getting a lot of those targets, but Frank Gore hasn't done much. Their rookie running back, P. Ryan, hasn't done anything, so there's a chance Bell sees some work in this game. As far as wide receivers, even with Joe Flacco starting, I think Crowder is still going to be the guy, the go-to guy on this offense. So Crowder, I'm definitely good with starting. And Chris Herndon, who hasn't done anything, being paired with Joe Flacco, who just loves his tight ends. Him and Dennis Pitta go way back. But yeah, so I think Chris Herndon is interesting. I don't think I'm ready to throw him back in my lineups if he's even on your roster anymore. He's probably been dropped by everybody at this point. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a bounce back game from Chris Herndon. I'm just not. I'm not going to trust it. I'm not going to throw him in my lineups. I just want to be ready if that is the case afterwards. As far as the Cardinals, they've been struggling a little bit lately. Kyler Murray, this could easily be a bounce back game for him. If Kenyon Drake cannot produce in this game against the Jets, then it's time for him to ride the bench. Because this is just the matchup of all matchups. Whether he's efficient or not, the game script will be in his favor. And if he can't do enough with his touches, can't get a touchdown, then he just doesn't deserve to be in your starting lineup anymore. So that's that. D-Hop in every week start. And no one else in the Cardinals really interests me other than the Cardinals defense. So yeah, so we got the next game here, the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Raiders. I do like the Chiefs defense in this matchup. They had I think they had a score last week, as well as a lot of turnovers. So they're coming off a good week against Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham. Mahomes, obviously you're starting him. Although I am worried, there is this picture of the end game last week where Mahomes was getting real close to Stephon Gilmore post-game. They were handshaking and hugging each other. And Stephon Gilmore is the one who tested positive today. So I'd be a little worried if I was a Patrick Mahomes owner. Have a backup plan ready in case something comes out this week. So yeah, just be aware of that. The good thing is the Chiefs play at home, which seems to be a problem for these COVID teams, to where they don't want to enter the plane. They don't want to be on a compact airplane when one person might have COVID. And that was the big issue with the Patriots. So the fact that the Patriots are at home, the Chiefs are at home, the Titans are at home, I'd say gives them a better chance at playing this game. So like I said, I'll get back to this game later, but just be aware of the Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure he'll be tested just like everybody else, so we'll see how that pans out. Running back wise, Clyde Edwards, this could be a big bounce back game for him. He's been a little off lately in some tough matchups, but he's finally got smooth sailing in this one against the Raiders. Tyreek Hill, one of my 32 facts, Tyreek Hill hasn't gone a regular season game without catching a touchdown pass since last year. So basically what I'm saying is Tyreek Hill has caught a touchdown in all of the 4 games for the Chiefs this year so far. So Tyreek Hill is an every week start. Tight end Travis Kelce, obviously every week start. No reason to even say that. But what about the Raiders here? So we got Derek Carr. May not be too bad of a start. He's actually been okay. I don't think this Chiefs defense did a lot last week, but I don't think they're anything crazy. Doesn't scare me away, but just not an ideal matchup. Brian Edwards is likely going to be out, and Ruggs has a chance at coming back in this matchup, so we'll see how that pans out. Either way, I think the wide receiver I'm actually interested in at this point is Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller also a tight end. So not really too much else other than Josh Jacobs, who is going into the week healthy. He's practicing in full. So, yeah, I mean, expectations are high for Jacobs after a couple disappointing results. He's still getting a ton of touches. He's still getting 3 catches a game. So I'm expecting a bounce-back game from Jacobs here as well. The Chiefs' run defense has not been great at all. All right, we got the 0-4 Bill O'Brien-less Texans hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, no more Bill O'Brien. I'm not really too sure who's going to be calling the plays. Whoever their offensive coordinator was. I know Bill O'Brien was taking over play calling duties, but I can't for the life of me remember who their offensive coordinator is. So, either way, they're going back to the play calling they had the first 3 weeks, which, as you can see, hasn't panned out rather. But I mean, the matchup is just too easy to even think about sitting a guy like Deshaun Watson, David Johnson. Even though he lost a lot of snaps to Duke Johnson, I think David Johnson's still a fine start this week. Will Fuller has shown that he's going to be fairly consistent throughout the year. Brandon Cooks did nothing last week. It seems like Randall Cobb is going to end up being that number 2 guy. So I would be a little weary about starting Cooks. It's a great matchup, but I just wouldn't want to do it. And obviously, none of these Texans tight ends have really done that much. So not interested in those guys. As far as the defenses, I think the Texans defense might be like a deep sleeper kind of thing. Like, I'm not excited about starting the Texans defense, but if it ends up being that way, then it ends up being that way. So Texans defense, I'm okay with starting. As far as the Jaguars, Gardner Minshew, I like this matchup for him with DJ Chark back. We saw he did a lot better this week. James Robinson has just been an absolute stud. Insanely great matchup for him. So starting James Robinson everywhere. Wide receiver wise, DJ Chark. After missing that one game, Gardner Minshew realized how much he actually trusts him, how much he actually likes him. So DJ Chark is going to be fine. Jex just got a I'm all over the place. But what I said was true. Jets expected to go with Joe Flacco as the starter this week. So Flacco will be starting, as I mentioned before. DJ Chark, I will start. Laviska Shenault has actually been pretty consistent recently. So he's a sneaky play in a really good matchup. None of these tight ends I really like. And if you're really desperate, maybe the Jaguars defense, just because the Texans haven't been able to do anything, probably get some sacks on Deshaun Watson as well. So, excuse my dog in the background. But, yeah. So let's move on to this matchup here. We got the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 1-2-1. The most annoying thing in football is seeing a team that has tied. I don't know if you guys are in the same boat as me, but I hate ties. I talked about this last week, I think. So I'll stop ranting about it now. As far as the Ravens here, obviously Lamar Jackson is the guy you're starting. But this is a fantastic matchup for the running backs. But, like, which one? Because Gus Edwards seems to be the guy. Then it's J.K. Dobbins. Then it's Mark Ingram. Like, Gus Edwards is the big problem here. So, I'm just staying away from these Ravens running backs. I mean, I think J.K. Dobbins might be worth the dart throw if you're desperate. But I'm just avoiding the backfield altogether at this point. Wide receiver-wise, Marquise Brown, he's been top 6 in target share as well as air yards. So he is getting the opportunity his way. He just hasn't really come down with it. So I think this is a game where he could bounce back, as well as a guy like Mark Andrews, who's coming off another good game as well. So definitely like those guys. Ravens defense hasn't lived up to being as good as I thought they were, but still a good start against the Bengals, because they are still the Bengals. Joe Burrow coming off his first win. Probably not ideal to start him against the Ravens, but I think he could still actually be okay. Joe Mixon. This is the big question, guys. Are you starting Joe Mixon after last week? My response is, yeah, I think I am. Because the biggest thing for me with Joe Mixon was lack of involvement in the passing game. Every time it's 2 minutes left in the game, they put Gio Bernard in, or it's third down, you see Joe Mixon going off the field. And one of the things I talked about was the fact that a couple weeks ago, Gio Bernard missed a really bad block. It was in that Thursday night game. He missed a really bad block, which actually led to a Joe Burrow fumble. And one of the things I said is look out, because this could be a sign of a change. This could mean Joe Mixon could start getting that role. Well, last game, I took a screenshot of it because I was very, very happy. In the final 2 minutes of the first half of the Bengals game, Joe Mixon was in the game. There was in their 2-minute drill, Joe Mixon was in the game. He caught a touchdown while they were losing in the last 2 minutes in the first half. And he hurdled someone and then did a flip. I mean, Joe Mixon made a big play. Then after that, he continued to just run the clock out. He ended up playing 83% of the snaps. Gio Bernard didn't see a single target. And remember, they were losing in the first half of this game. And Joe Mixon was still on the field. Not to mention, Antonio Gibson last week put up 22 on these Ravens. And that's Antonio Gibson. So I'm still starting Joe Mixon this week. Some people might think it's a trap. Whatever. It could be. He's still getting a ton of touches. If he sees the work he saw, and I'm not even talking about the second half of the last week, because you can say, oh, they were up, Joe Mixon was in, just running it out, whatever. If he sees the work he got in the first half, which is where he was on the field like 60, 70, 80% of the time, Gio Bernard didn't see a single target. Joe Mixon had 6 catches last week. So if he sees that kind of work, he's going to be absolutely fine. It's not going to be a big game. I'm not expecting anything like he did last week. But yeah, I'm starting Joe Mixon. Wide receiver wise, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, those seem to be the main guys. I'd probably rather Boyd in the slot rather than T. Higgins on the outside against Marlon Humphrey. Although Marlon Humphrey might be on AJ Green. I don't know who's taller between him and Marcus Peters. But T. Higgins is also tall. So he's going to see Marcus Peters or he's going to see Marlon Humphrey. I'm pretty sure Marcus Peters was on Terry McLaurin last week. So maybe there's a chance T. Higgins sees Peters. We'll have to see. Either way, it's not a great matchup against either of the corners. So I'm not looking to start T. Higgins this week. But if T. Higgins does go off again, then he's officially a thing. This is another trend that's happening. And AJ Green, I'm just not starting him. But Tyler Boyd, I'm still okay starting. Tight ends, Drew Sample hasn't done enough. That's just kind of the end of that. If I haven't mentioned, these are the bye weeks, Packers and Lions. The planned bye weeks this week. We know ahead of time. Next game here, we got the Falcons hosting the Carolina Panthers. So the 0-4 Falcons against the surging Panthers. Very surprising here. I'm expecting a bounce back game from Matt Ryan at home. The running backs, Todd Gurley, has actually been decent in the last 2 games. So I think he'll be a low running back 2 play. Just know he can disappear. It's possible. It's possible for him to just disappear. As far as wide receivers, Julio Jones may not make this game. And Calvin Ridley is coming off a goose egg. And a lot of people are worried about the fact that Calvin Ridley didn't score a single point last week. I'm not too worried about it. He was banged up coming into the game. He was questionable up to game time. Matt Ryan missed 2 wide open touchdowns for Ridley. Ridley should have walked away with this game with 3 or 4 catches and 2 touchdowns. Matt Ryan was just having such an off game during prime time with Zadarius Smith breathing down his neck. He actually got 3 sacks on him. So kind of just a off, weird game for Matt Ryan. I'm not worried about Calvin Ridley at all. He's going to be fine in this matchup, especially with Julio out. There's no way you can sit Ridley. So starting Ridley. Who I am worried about, though, is Russell Gage. So we talked about like early trends. He had great first 2 matchups. But it seems like Olamide Zaccheaus, and even Christian Blake have started to become more involved. I think their second-year wide receiver, Olamide Zaccheaus, might have a chance at a bigger role. So he could end up being the wide receiver too instead of Gage. So it makes me a little weary about Gage. Hayden Hurst, we saw some extra involvement from him last week. So I'm okay with Hayden Hurst, especially with Julio out. It just opens up more stuff for the rest of the team. As far as these Panthers, great matchup for Teddy Bridgewater. Mike Davis, he's still in there. You got to start him every single week. Wide receiver wise, this is like the Kenyon Drake game. for DJ Moore. If DJ Moore cannot produce in this matchup, then he is riding the bench. Similar to how Kenyon Drake can't produce against the Jets, he'll get the bench. This is the same thing for DJ Moore. This is do or die. So yeah, this is definitely. Robbie has been too consistent. He's definitely worth the flex wide receiver 2 play at this point. But I'll give DJ Moore one more chance, just like we gave Joe Mixon last week, and he came through. So, yeah, I'll start DJ Moore this week. I'll start Robbie Anderson this week. Ian Thomas, who I'm pretty sure caught a touchdown last week. I want to double check to see if I'm actually right on this one. Let's see. Ian Thomas. And the reason that's so important is because okay, no, not Michael. Ian. So he did catch a touchdown last week. The Falcons have been terrible against tight ends. They're like the Cardinals times 2 from last year. They allowed Greg Olsen to have a 10-plus point game. They allowed Dalton Schultz to have his huge game. Who else did they allow? Robert Tonyan, 3 touchdowns. Jimmy Graham had 2 touchdowns. So I think this is a game where Ian Thomas might be a sneaky DFS play. He hasn't done nearly enough for me to consider him on a week-to-week basis, or probably in my lineups. But, I mean, this is just the matchup of all matchups for him. If you play DFS, then this might be a good time to use him. Panthers defense, Matt Ryan at home, I'll stay away. We got the 49ers hosting the Dolphins. Jimmy Garoppolo expected to be back. George Kittle back. Deebo Samuel back. Brandon Ayuk healthy. Raheem Mostert potentially back. So this 49ers team is all of a sudden very healthy, other than the defense. So Jimmy Garoppolo, I might consider streaming him in this matchup. He's going to have his full weapons at his disposal. Raheem Mostert, if he's playing, I'll start him. Jerick McKinnon at this point, he's been just insanely involved over the last 2 weeks, and I don't think he's going to go away quietly. So I think Jerick McKinnon is also worth a start. Talk like do I have a lisp there? Where'd that come from? Deebo, I think his snaps are going to go up and up every single week, so I would consider Deebo in this matchup. Brandon Ayuk had a big game last week, but still, with George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, not ideal to start Ayuk. Obviously, you're starting George Kittle, but yeah. So, and I would consider the Dolphins' defense as well. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been hit or miss. He was missed last week. He was missed week 1. So, on top of that, probably not starting Ryan Fitzpatrick, even though the 49ers, I think their top 3 starting corners are going to be out this game. So that'll be interesting. But I still just don't like Fitzpatrick in this matchup. As far as the running backs, Myles Gaskin has been very involved, and he's still playing 65% of the snaps, so starting him. Devontae Parker, he's an every week start at this point. Like I mentioned, the top 3 corners are out. He's consistently been getting the most targets, so he's in. Preston Williams is out for me. He just hasn't done enough. Isaiah Ford is starting to come up, but not enough for me to have interest. And Mike Gesicki, the big letdown. I thought he was going to have a big week last week, but this guy's just been total hit or miss. So if you have another good option, I'll sit Mike Gesicki this week. But I'm just going to stop talking about Mike Gesicki because he's just been all over. Be aware, this could be a game where Tua comes in. So Ryan Fitzpatrick's leash is getting shorter and shorter, and Brian Flores didn't even fully commit to Fitzpatrick starting this week. So I think there's a chance we might see Tua in this week, which is another reason why I really don't like Fitzpatrick. If Tua comes in, this helps Gaskin, it helps Parker, and it definitely helps Mike Gesicki. Rookie quarterbacks tend to lean on the tight ends. So just keep an eye out for that. As far as this game here, the Dallas Cowboys hosting the New York Giants. So the Cowboys are another one of those teams who have just been awful against tight ends. They let Austin Hooper score last week, who hasn't done anything the whole year. So we'll get to Evan Ingram in a minute. Dak is like on pace for over 6,000 passing yards. You're starting Dak every week no matter what. Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, you're starting him. Amari Cooper has been the most consistent Cowboys wide receiver. But outside of that, I mean, I'm not starting Michael Gallup this week. He's been way too inconsistent. It's a good matchup, but it's just he's been way too inconsistent. CeeDee Lamb would be the guy I would consider, but ideally I don't want to be in a position to start either of them. Dalton Schultz has actually been fairly consistent, surprisingly, so Schultz may not be a bad start this week. As far as the Giants, Cowboys have no defense. I think if there's a game for Daniel Jones to bounce back, it would be this game. Devontae Freeman is starting to see more and more work, so I would consider him probably like a flex play this week in a pretty good matchup. The Cowboys have actually had one of the worst run defenses in the entire NFL, so there's that. Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, both worth a look. They're both getting a ton of targets, so I think they're both desperate starts this week. I think Evan Ingram is actually going to be in for a pretty good game. He's coming off a 10-target week. So I'm starting Evan Ingram in this game, and Darius Slayton could actually be worth a flex play as well. So that's that. Browns hosting the Colts. The Colts have been in the most low-scoring matchups out of every single team. So that being said, I think the only Brown I really want to start is Kareem Hunt. The Colts have allowed the least amount of passing yards in the NFL, so I'll start Kareem Hunt, but I'm not starting Odell even after his big week. I'm not starting Jarvis, not starting Austin Hooper, not starting Baker Mayfield. It's really just Kareem Hunt and D'Ernest Johnson, who might be worth a desperate play. If I'm choosing one wide receiver, it's Odell, but I'm still not excited about that matchup. As far as the Colts, can't start Phillip Rivers. Jonathan Taylor, he's an every week start. Just hoping he's getting more involved sooner. T.Y. Hilton has proved he's nothing, and that's not harsh. As far as the tight ends, Mo Ellie Cox did catch a touchdown last week, but Trey Burton is back and Jack Doyle is there, so it's just getting pretty sloppy in Indy. So I think the only Colt I'd start is Jonathan Taylor, and both these defenses may not be bad because I'm expecting a low scoring game here. We'll save the Patriots game. So the Sunday night game, we have the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Vikings in what probably could have been a decent matchup, which is probably not going to be a decent matchup anymore. The Vikings just have not been good. Obviously, you're starting Russell, you're starting Carson, you're starting Metcalf, you're starting Lockett, even after a disappointing week. As far as the Vikings, I think this is a great matchup for Kirk Cousins. Maybe worth the streamer. Dalvin Cook, why would you sit him? Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen seem to be every week starts as well. I mean, when Justin Jefferson plays over 70% of the snaps, which has been the last 2 weeks, he has over 100 yards receiving. And this is a great matchup as well against Seattle, who has allowed a ton of receiving yards, the most in the league per game. So I'll start Justin Jefferson here. I'll start Adam Thielen. And the tight ends haven't done much. So that's that. Saints hosting the Chargers. This is assuming it's going to be Justin Herbert. When Tyrod Taylor is healthy, he's expected to start again just because, I mean, the way he was taken out just wasn't all that good. I mean, the doctor literally punctured his lung. So just be aware, the Tyrod Taylor show, if it's not this week, it could be back next week. But the Saints hosting the Chargers, Michael Thomas will more than likely be back for this game. Alvin Kamara, obviously you're starting him. I'm probably staying away from Drew Brees, even with Michael Thomas back. He's just been so inconsistent lately. And Jared Cook, if he's healthy, not really too interested with Michael Thomas. So if Michael Thomas is back, I'm starting him. Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, the only two people I'm really looking to start here. Herbert, this is a good matchup for him, assuming he is a starter. Joshua Kelly, I would be my pick if I'm picking a running back. I'm not excited about the matchup. I'm not excited about his recent fumbles. So I'm not thrusting Kelly into my lineup with high expectations. As far as the wide receivers, Keenan Allen has the highest target share in the entire NFL right now. You just cannot take that guy out of your lineup. And I think Hunter Henry will have a bit of a bounce back game as well against another team that has been pretty bad against tight ends. So I'm liking Hunter Henry. I'm liking Keenan Allen. Herbert could be okay, but I'm not excited about too much else. All right, so that's it for most of the games. I'm going to go back and go over the COVID games in case they are played. So the Titans hosting the Bills, coming off of a bye. Not a bad matchup for Ryan Tannehill. Not a great one. The Bills' defense hasn't been as great. It's more so been their offense. You're not sitting Derrick Henry. On top of that, A.J. Brown is going to be back. And Adam Humphries is one of the players who has contracted COVID. So Adam Humphries will be out if this game is played. So I will start A.J. Brown. I think Corey Davis might be worth a look as well. And Jonnu Smith, on top of that, has been pretty solid too. So all three of those guys, I'd start. Corey Davis, not so much, really, with A.J. Brown. But as far as these Bills, I mean, Josh Allen, of course. Devin Singletary, I think, is going to take a little bit of a backseat if Zach Moss is healthy. He just missed last game, so he could be back for this. There's a good chance he'll be back for this game if the game is played. So, depending on your options, I might lower my expectations for Devin Singletary. Wide receiver-wise, Stephon Diggs, still one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. You got to start him. John Brown hasn't been too consistent. Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis. You want to take a dart throw on one of these guys, I'm fine with it because they've been performing. Just not a fan of the tight ends. So that's that. This matchup here, you have the Patriots hosting the Broncos. There hasn't been too much on this game being canceled. I'm pretty sure this one will be one of the ones that stay on. But this is likely going to be Jarrett Stidham. If Cam Newton has two negative tests, because he is asymptomatic, if he has two negative tests in a row, then Cam Newton can actually be active for this game. So, as of right now, I'm going to assume it's Jarrett Stidham. If not, Cam Newton. As far as these running backs, I mean, Damian Harris had almost 100 yards last week, but at the same time, James White was the main guy. I'd say Damian Harris is a much better start if Cam Newton is the quarterback of this game. And if he's not, then I would keep Damian Harris on the sidelines. James White, if it's Jarrett Stidham, I'll take James White. If it's Cam Newton, I'll take Damian Harris. Wide receiver-wise, Julian Edelman, he had a lot of bad drops last week. Last 2 weeks have just not been great for him. But at home, I think Edelman could definitely bounce back if it's Stidham. If it's Cam and they're going to blow out the Broncos, then I want nothing to do with Julian Edelman. So just keep an eye about who's playing quarterback. It means a lot more than you think. And N'Keal Harry, I think either way will be okay. So as far as these Broncos, it could be Brett Rippon or it could be Drew Lock. I'm not really sure. I believe they said Drew Lock would probably come back after the bye week. So they might hold him for another week and let Brett Rippon do his thing. And if that is the case, then the Patriots defense is going to be a great start. Noah Fant expected to miss this game. So with that being said, Stephon Gilmore is going to be out. Tim Patrick could be a sneaky play if it's Brett Rippon. And Jerry Jeudy, I think, could be a pretty good play as well. They're going to need to pass the ball if you want to keep up with the Patriots. The Patriots are going to try to eat up a lot of clock, so they're going to have to catch up. The running back-wise, not a great matchup for Melvin Gordon. And you got Phillip Lindsay coming back too, so this could go back to being a pretty split backfield. Probably staying away from Melvin Gordon as a whole, but yeah. So that's going to round up the Week 5 I'm an idiot. Week 5 matchups. Appreciate you guys listening. If you guys are new to the channel, swipe up. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.